Okay, welcome to this play of perspectives. Eventually, we all begin to become aware that that's really what is happening in every moment. It is a play of perspectives. Let's explore that a bit here, shall we? The first person I ever sat with began sharing with me how she was having difficulty in her life and she was wanting things to be different. And it was creating a lot of suffering for her. She was wanting her situation to be different, her boss to be different, her kids to be different, her friends to be different, the weather to be different. One after the other, she was listing off to me all the things that were bothering her because they weren't how she would like them to be. And there was a pause, and I could feel something, a sort of energy arising in me, and my right hand made this grasping gesture over to the side between us, to my left and her right, reaching out into space in a very needy, graspy hand gesture with my right hand. And as my right hand was reaching out into space for something that it was wanting, my left hand grabbed my right wrist and prevented it from going any further, stopped it in its tracks from getting what it wanted. And she's noticing this very graspy, needy-looking hand gesture, and so am I. And I don't know what's happening here, but I can feel there's an energy emerging from me as this hand gesture is happening, this very graspy, needy-looking hand gesture. And all of a sudden, these words came out of my mouth, as if it was already a known thing. It surprised me as much as it surprised her. So as my left hand is grabbing my right wrist and preventing my right hand from going any further to try to get what it wants, these words came out. As it turns out, there is this part of our human consciousness that I call the wanter. And it is insatiable. Its view is if it can get what it wants, then it will be happy. And it will do whatever it takes to get what it wants. It's very selfish. It doesn't care about others. It only cares about itself. It wants what it wants. And its view is, if I get what I want, then I'll be happy. So it will do whatever it takes to get what it wants. And no matter how many times it has gotten what it wants, it doesn't bring lasting happiness. It doesn't bring lasting fulfillment. It will always want more and more and more. It is insatiable. It is the root of all of our suffering. Every emotional disturbance we have ever had is coming from this aspect of consciousness that I call our wanter. When it doesn't get what it wants, it gets frustrated, annoyed, angry, resentful, disappointed, dissatisfied, sad, depressed, regretful. All of these emotions that we experience occur when something isn't going how our wanter wants it to go, and it can't control it. It can't manipulate it. It can't get it to be how it wants, and so it has a disturbance. This is the root of all of our suffering. And let's not vilify the wanter. It's not the villain in this story. It is our ally. It's just trying to help us. It will always try to optimize whatever situation is occurring and make it better for us. It will always be trying to idealize the moment for us, to make it better for us. But no matter how much it has gotten what it wants, it's never fulfilled. It's never happy. It is a hollow quest. And it is our ally. It's just trying to make things better for us. And we were both amazed by this. We now had a new term for this aspect of our human expression. Prior to that moment, that day, all those decades ago, with the first person I ever sat with at the old studio, the only term we had for this aspect of consciousness was the ego. This was a term that Sigmund Freud had popularized from the Latin word ego, which means I. He had used it as a way to describe this part of us that, as I mentioned, had gathered up a very negative connotation through the years. Now we had a new term. And this new term, the wanter, gave us a chance to let ourselves off the hook, because we could now notice that there was this aspect, but it wasn't wrong or bad. It wasn't the enemy. It was a part of our consciousness that's just trying to make things better for us, trying to optimize things for us. We can honor our wanter. Whenever we're having a disturbance, we can just stop and ask ourselves, what is my wanter wanting that it's not getting? And we will start to notice that that is what's causing the disturbance for us. Whether it's irritation or annoyance or anger or resentment or primal rage or sadness, whatever it is, our wanter is wanting something to be better for us, something to be optimized for us. It is our ally. And from that day onward, everyone I've ever explored with, I have shared this with, and I have found it to be so beneficial. It clears everything up. It lets us realize that every time we're upset, it's our wanter wanting something to be different than it is. And anytime anybody is treating us in any less than lovely way, it's just because they're in their wanter. Because our wanter will do manipulative, controlling things to try to get what it wants. So whenever anybody has ever done anything unkind to us, manipulative, controlling, subversive, mean, hurtful, it's because they're in their wanter. Every war that has ever been started, it was started by somebody or somebodies that were in their wanter. Every time anyone has ever hurt anyone, they're in their wanter. Now, this doesn't mean we condone those kinds of behaviors, but we can also start to understand why it's occurring. If we're in our wanter, we will do whatever it takes to try to get what we want. Some wanters might be real aggressive. Some wanters might be more passively aggressive. There will be very overt wanters that will just take what they want and power over, very overt. And there will be covert wanters, more subversive, more strategic, not as aggressive, trying to get others to get what they want by manipulating them in a subversive kind of way. So this is the origin of that phrase, that day, all those years ago at the old studio. The wanter, it is our ally, and it is the source of all suffering. In this play of perspectives, what we start to notice is, if we're in our wanter, then we're going to be experiencing from the perspective of our wanter. And if we're in our true nature, we're going to be experiencing reality from our true nature. Now, when we're resting back into our true nature, we're not captured in the wanter. We're in a place of equanimity, acceptance, kindness, patience, understanding. So whatever's occurring in our life, we're experiencing it somewhere on this continuum of perspectives. It's not an either or, the wanter and true nature. It's a continuum. If we're all the way in our wanter, then we're going to really be suffering and really upset and really controlling and really manipulative and mean and hurtful. potentially. If we're all the way in true nature, we're going to be understanding, at peace, patient, kind, loving, silly, creative, filled with wonder, aware that the whole thing is an adventure. When we get pulled into that I call the wanter, we see reality as a problem. Because the wanter is the field agent of the problem solver mind. These go together. That aspect of us that I call problem solver mind. That's what our mind does. It solves problems for us. So if we're trapped in our problem solver mind, we see reality as a problem. Whatever it is, it's perceived as a problem. And then our problem solver mind sends out its field agent, our wanter, to try to get compliance, to try to manipulate, control, change things. So these go together. Problem solver mind and the wanter go together. If we're in that perspective, then whatever it is that's occurring is seen as a problem that we're trying to control and get to be better for us. If we're relaxed into our true nature, we don't see whatever's occurring as a problem, we see it as an adventure, a lovely possibility in which we can then experience reality from the play. We can wake up to this play while in the play. We can wake up to this play of perspectives while we are experiencing the play of perspectives. This is the awakening journey. Now, for most of us, we're going to need ways to break free from the tendency to be so captured in our problem solver mind and our wanter. We're going to need practices, ways. Well, in my journey, I have learned hundreds of spiritual practices. Hundreds, literally hundreds. And what I share are a handful of practices that I have found to be the most simple, most accessible ways of breaking free of the tendency to be captured in the problem solver mind and the wanter. It all begins with what I call the name that thought practice, which emerged that very first day, that very first person I ever sat with at the old studio. I noticed that her mind was very busy at one point during our exploration, and I had been taught a practice at the ashram called the cat-mouse meditation that I had found very beneficial for not being captured in the mind. And so at one point during our exploration, I imagined she might benefit from that meditation called cat-mouse meditation. And I said to her, I learned a wonderful practice at the ashram that allows us to have a different relationship to our thoughts and to our mind. Would you like to learn it? And she said, yes, absolutely. Please share it with me. So for whatever reason, in that moment, instead of teaching her cat-mouse meditation, what came out of me in that moment was I invited her into how I had been doing cat-mouse meditation for years and years and years. So we suddenly now had a new practice that emerged out of the cat-mouse meditation. In the cat-mouse meditation at the ashram, we were invited to imagine that we were a house cat sitting on the floor in the kitchen of the house we live in, and we noticed that there's a mouse hole at the base of the wall. And as this very observant cat, we're on the lookout to see if a mouse comes out. And if a mouse comes out, we could chase after the mouse, and then we get to experience everything that comes with chasing after that mouse. The mouse might be faster than us, and it ducks underneath the kitchen cabinet, and we bang our head on the kitchen cabinet, and we feel like we're such a failure at being a house cat, and we feel so terrible about ourselves. Or we could just name what kind of mouse it is and be on the lookout and see if another one comes out. And if another mouse comes out of the mouse hole, we could name what kind of mouse that is. Or we could chase after it. This was the cat-mouse meditation. That's all they said to us when they invited us into the practice. Well, the way that I had been doing cat-mouse meditation for years was I would literally name the thought, because I was aware the mouse was representing thought and the cat was representing our awareness. So when I would do cat-mouse meditation, I would name the thought. Right as it started to emerge from my mind, I would name the thought, and then I would rest back and see if another one came. And if another thought came, I would name that thought and rest back and see if another one came. And what I started to notice was, little by little, my problem solver mind noticed when I wasn't using the thoughts, it would then say, well, what about this? And it would send up another one and another one, another one. Well, my problem solver mind started to notice when I wasn't using the thoughts that it didn't need to keep sending up thoughts. So the mind tended to quiet itself. This is what I had noticed over the years. So right in that moment, when I thought I was going to teach her cat-mouse meditation, instead what came out of me was, be on the lookout for your next thought. And if a thought comes, tell me what it is. And she said, I don't know what I'm going to cook for my family for dinner tonight. And I said, okay, what's for dinner tonight thought? Now rest back and see if another one comes. And she said, oh, Mitch, I'm such a terrible mom. I should have already planned a dinner for my family. And she was starting to chase after that mouse. She was starting to get captured in that thought. So I interrupted her. I said, wait. Before you get captured in that thought, let's just catch it early and name it. Terrible mom thought. Okay, now rest back and see if another one comes. And she started giggling. She said, oh, I like this. Terrible mom thought. And she rested back. And it was quiet. And it was quiet. And it was quiet. And then she starts giggling. And she says, Mitch, this is so weird. Maybe I'm doing it wrong, but I'm not having any more thoughts. And we both started laughing. I said, well, this is what tends to happen in this practice. If you name the thought and rest back and see if another one comes, your mind starts to notice that you're not using those thoughts. And it starts to realize that there isn't a problem that it needs to solve, and so it quiets itself. She said, this is so weird. I am not used to having this quiet of a mind. She said, let me see if another one comes. And I said, okay, let's see. And it was just quiet. And it was quiet. And she starts giggling more and more. We're both giggling. Wow, Mitch, this is life-changing. I've never experienced such a quiet mind. She said, what do you call this practice? Well, I couldn't call it cat-mouse because it wasn't. It was something new. And I said, how about we call it the joyful noticer practice? Because we were both giggling so much. So for many years, when I would invite people into this practice, if they asked me for a name, I called it the joyful noticer practice. And then one day, several years down the road of sitting with people, someone that I had shared this with, in our second exploration, she said, Mitch, that name, that thought practice you taught me is life-changing. I said, the what? She said, the name, that thought practice you taught me. I said, well, which one is that? She said, the one where you said, be on the lookout for your next thought and name the thought and then rest back and see if another one comes. The name, that thought practice. Isn't that what you called it? And I said, well, no, but that is a beautiful name for the practice. Would it be okay with you if we use that as the name for the practice from now on? She said, well, yeah, but I'm pretty sure you called it that. So that's what we have called it ever since, the name, that thought practice. Now, sometimes it happens so quick that we can't catch it at the thought, and we get pulled in to the disturbance, and we're affected. We're frustrated, we're annoyed, we're irritated, we're angry, we're resentful, whatever that is. Well, when you get pulled in, now we have the living practice. This is a practice that sort of emerged from all the years with my mom. My mom would always invite me to turn toward my feelings rather than distracting from them or avoiding them. So this was something I had done my whole life, and I called it burning in it. Just being willing to burn in the feelings. And then as time went on in my journey and my time at the ashram, I kind of incorporated some of the elements of things like Madhya Vikasa, this expansion practice I had learned at the ashram, with this burning practice. And elements of the Name That Thought practice of observing the emotion as well as experiencing it came in. And little by little, it kind of became this practice that I just called burning in it, where I would let myself feel the feeling fully. Whenever there was an emotion or any disturbance whatsoever, I would turn my attention toward it and let myself directly experience it without trying to change it or figure it out or distract from it. Just directly experiencing it without any resistance, without bringing any agenda to it. And then once I was really letting myself fully feel it, then I would bring in that there was also that part of me that was observing the feeling, aware of the feeling, and yet not being affected by the feeling. And the feeling would, little by little, start to soften and uncontract. As long as there was no agenda, no outcome orientation, just directly experiencing the feeling, I noticed it would start to release itself. And I would be able to then experience ever more that there is this awareness that I am that is not affected by this feeling. And expand out into that pure consciousness that is beyond the body, beyond the feelings in the body, beyond the mind. Pure, eternal consciousness. So this practice is very helpful to us when we're experiencing emotions. We can honor them. We don't have to numb out from them. We don't have to avoid them. We don't have to figure them out. We don't have to bring any agenda to them. This starts to normalize that we will have feelings. And where do they come from? Whenever anything doesn't go how our wanter wants it to go. That's what creates these feelings. That's what creates these disturbances. Our wanter gets upset and disturbed when it doesn't get what it wants. We can then be available to the living practice and honor our feelings. This can all be now normalized. Of course we're going to have feelings. We're having a human experience. We're going to have feelings. We have the living practice to help us with this, to honor our feelings and remember that that's not all that we are. We're also the awareness of our feelings. We also have the loving blessing practice, which I learned at the ashram. It's called Ashirwad. It's an ancient practice in which you get in touch with the love that we are, the pure, unconditional love. In this ancient practice that I call the loving blessing practice, you bring in either a person or an animal that you can feel unconditional love towards, and you let that love that you are be shared. Instantly you get in touch with this unconditional love, this pure, accepting presence that we are that is so kind and so compassionate and so understanding, and we let that love be shared to the animal. It can be a pet, like our pet dog or our pet cat or our favorite horse, or I have one person who has a favorite alpaca that they love on their alpaca ranch. Any being that we can feel unconditional love for, we let that love then just be shared to that person. And we get to experience that the love we are is not only a noun, it's also a verb. This is a very powerfully transformative practice, because then when somebody comes in that we can't share the love with, in this practice, we don't force it. We don't judge ourselves for that. We be very gentle and kind toward ourselves, and we just return back to somebody that we can share the love with. Little by little, this will start to build a momentum. And you'll start to notice that people that you couldn't share love with, there'll come a point through regular loving blessing practice where the love you are will be able to be shared to that person. Very powerful practice. In every moment, these three practices can serve us in very powerful and beneficial ways. Now, two other practices that I invite people into are called problem solver mind practice and first growl practice. And these are done on the fly while we're living our lives. Because sometimes you can't catch it at the thought, but you might not be all the way captured where you need to be doing living practice. So between name that thought practice and living practice are these two practices. The first one I call problem solver mind practice. This is when you start to get pulled into something like, let's say, worry. You're starting to notice that you're worrying. If you can catch it early and just ask your problem solver mind, hey, problem solver mind, is there anything of benefit that can be done right now regarding that? And if the answer is no, which it usually will be because worry is forward in time, just thank your problem solver mind. Thank you so much, problem solver mind, for trying to solve that for me. You're right, it would be way better for me if we could solve that right now, but actually there's nothing we can do about that right now. And then shift your attention to your breathing and let your in-breaths and out-breaths be longer and slower than they normally are. And if you stay focused on the in-breaths and the out-breaths being longer and slower, you'll no longer be focused on that worry thought. And then it relaxes your nervous system and it gives you a chance to not get pulled into that worry. I call that one problem solver mind practice. Now, after that, let's say it's a bit too far and you've gotten pulled in and you're starting to get affected, but you're still kind of early in the process and it's starting to become some sort of disturbance. I call it a growl. So the next practice that gives us a chance to catch it early, I call it the first growl practice. Right when you start to feel the disturbance, maybe it's frustration because you can't solve that problem or something. You're starting to get frustrated. Right in that moment, when you start to feel that disturbance, stop and ask your wanter, hey, wanter, what is it that you're wanting that you're not getting? You can be kind to your wanter. What is my wanter wanting? You can be inquisitive. What is my wanter wanting that it's not getting? Hey, wanter, what are you wanting that you're not getting? What you'll notice is that's what's creating the disturbance. Remember, every disturbance is coming from our wanter wanting something that it's not getting. So if we can catch a disturbance early in what I call the first growl and just ask, what is my wanter wanting that it's not getting? Whatever it is, thank your wanter. Thank you so much, wanter. You're right, it would be way better for me if there wasn't bumper-to-bumper traffic. Thank you so much for wanting that for me. You're right, but we don't have any control over that. Then once again, focus on long, slow breathing. Nice, long, slow in-breaths. Nice, long, slow out-breaths. If you're focusing on those longer breaths, you're no longer potentially getting captured in that disturbance, and your nervous system will relax, and maybe you don't get pulled into that. I call this one the first growl practice. Now, all of these practices are explored in great depth in the first book called Wanter Dynamics and the Love We Are. And there are chapters that go into great detail regarding all of these practices. Same with the first season of the podcast called Wanter Dynamics and the Love We Are. All of the original recordings that then became the book are in that first season of the podcast. So if you would like to go into more detail with all of this, you can find those in the first book and the first podcast. In this play of perspectives, these practices give us a chance to be less likely to create all that unnecessary suffering for ourselves. The more we're doing name that thought practice, we start changing the habit of our attention. Maybe we don't always get pulled into those troubling thoughts. The more you're doing name that thought practice, you start changing the momentum of where your attention goes. And maybe you can catch it right on the fly and you just name the thought and you don't even create that disturbance for you. If you do get pulled in And you can't catch it at problem solver mind practice or first growl practice. Living practice. Honor your feelings. Allow them to be directly experienced. Realize that they're all coming from the wanter, not getting what it wants. And the loving blessing practice, where the love we are gets ever more liberated and ever more liberated and ever more liberated. The more you're doing the loving blessing practice, little by little, and this takes time, you'll start to notice that people you weren't able to send love toward, you're now able to send love to them. And little by little, the love you are will be liberated toward everyone, including your own self. When you do the loving blessing practice, don't leave yourself out. Also include yourself. Now, for some people that I've shared this with over the years, that one is a bit challenging for them. But always try to include your own self in your loving blessing practice as well. Welcome to this buck wild and lovely adventure that we call life on planet Earth. And it is a play of perspectives. And through these practices and learning about the wanter and the problem solver mind and our true nature, we can ever more enjoy the adventure of life on planet Earth together.